In this episode of the No Money Real Estate Podcast, I'm going to talk to all Canadians who are trying to save for retirement. Listen, over the last 50 years, we've seen this incredible platform develop in Canada where people can take their hard-earned money and put it into tax-free savings vehicles like RRSPs, RESPs, LIRAs, and TFSAs. And it's all designed to help you save for retirement, but the system is failing you until now. I'm going to show you how you can get your money back and you can go from average returns of 5 and 6% to 15 and 20% inside of your RRSPs. And we're going to get into it right after this.
Hey, my name's Ken, and I'm a real estate investor. I want to welcome you to the No Money Real Estate Podcast. On this show, I'm going to interview elite level real estate investors from all over North America. And I'm going to help you to see one thing that all successful real estate investors have in common. They built their portfolios without using a dime of their own money. I've got a portfolio of $300 million in real estate. That includes resorts, apartment buildings, commercial buildings, and I've built the entire portfolio without using a dime of my own money. Real estate is a business that anybody can get into, but the strategies that those tight real estate investors use to build massive portfolios have been kept secret for decades. Now, because of this show, I'm going to reveal them to you. So let's get started.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. I got to start off this episode with just asking you a question. Did you get sold the bill of goods? In other words, what I mean is, when you were younger, did you start investing in RRSPs? Did you have a money manager or somebody convince you to do this? And what they told you when you were getting started is that your RRSPs were going to be your retirement. You could take up to 20% of your salary and put it into RRSPs, and they would create returns for you every year that would compound and start growing, and it would fund your retirement. I remember that. I was a police officer back in Ottawa, and I was starting to make some decent money. And our first child came along. And my financial manager at the CIBC convinced me to start an RSP and an RESP for my kids. And they promised me 14 to 15% returns. And I did get that back in the 80s or in the 90s. When I very first started doing this, I was getting 14 and 15% returns. But I started to realize when my kids were in their early years, like 8, 9, 10, those returns I was getting annually started dropping drastically. Before I knew it, they were bragging about 8% returns, and I was getting 6% returns. And the compounding just wasn't happening. Like, do you guys know what I'm talking about? Are you picking up what I'm putting down here? Have you seen that? Well, did you know that there's a way that you can now guarantee yourself? I shouldn't say that. I'm not allowed to say it. I own an investment fund, so I'm not allowed to say guaranteed. Well, you could get yourself into a situation where you could realize a 15% return year over year on your RSPs. I got to help everybody to understand this. I'm very, very passionate about this, and I'm going to give you a link to check out more information on this at the end of this episode, but you got to understand the history of how all this happened. Firstly, I'm going to tell you that RRSPs and RESPs, TFSAs, LIRAs, these registered vehicles are probably the smartest way for average Canadians to ensure they have money for retirement. You know, just living on the pension you're going to get from somebody is not going to do it. But if you do that, if you take that 20% of your income every year and slam it into RSPs and leave it there and let it compound, as long as you're getting 15% returns, it is crazy how the money will go. I don't know if you've ever thought back about this, but let me take you on a little history lesson. This idea of registered funds and investing money for your retirement actually started in the 70s. And it's when some really great economists and some accountants said, hey, why don't we start this thing in Canada where people can take part of their taxed income, put it into a savings vehicle where the money accumulates tax-free and they only pay tax as they get it out. Brilliant idea. And when they first started it, there weren't a lot of ways for people to actually invest their money. So what most people had to do was go to their bank, and they could use RRSPs, they could use that investment vehicle, but the only thing that they could buy was Canada bonds. Now, Canada bonds were bonds that were issued by the federal government. I don't even know if they even have them anymore. And they offered an 8% return, which was really good. Then, as this still got better and better, new ways to invest that money started to come out. And the next thing that came out after Canada bonds, Canada savings bonds, wasn't mutual fund yet. I can't even remember what it was. It was probably some type of bank vehicle that was created. But in the mid 80s, mutual funds were born. A mutual fund, for those that don't know, is an investment vehicle where an expert in a specific area will oversee money invested in a category of products. I'll give you a good example. There's a couple mutual funds in Canada that are doing amazing in the hospitality space. And what they do in these areas is people will invest their money and a qualified fund manager will take all the money and they'll invest it in a group of companies that are publicly traded companies that have really great performance. Now, hospitality mutual funds do really well because hospitality companies have incredibly robust profit margins. And so I know of one hospitality mutual fund that is still offering a 10% return. Here's the interesting thing. There's over $100 million in this mutual fund. So that's all of our money being pooled together. We give permission for this fund manager to manage it for us. So he puts it in these funds. But listen to this. The fees that the account manager is charging is 4%. So that money's actually making 14%, but he's taking 4% of it. Now, if there's $100 million in that fund and he's taking 4% of that, that's $4 million. That's not going back to you and I. It's the difference that goes back to you and I. But that was the best thing that was out there. And when these mutual funds were first introduced into the registered funds area, people were making significant money. That's when I first started investing in my RRSPs. And I left it with my fund manager and I left it in mutual funds. And what I saw happening over the next 15 years was those returns where I was getting 10 and 12% started going down to 9 and 10%. Started going down to 7 and 8%. And then in 2012, I think is when I walked away from it, it was down to 6%. And I wasn't getting that compounding effect that I just showed you because it was only 6%. But friends, everything evolves. And that's what you want to be looking for. If you want to maximize the money you can make with your registered funds, you have to be smart enough to look at the evolutions. So just like the things you could use your RSPs to invest in the early days was simple, then it got into mutual funds. Well, friends, most people don't realize this, but it was in the early 80s, the federal government said that anybody that had RSPs could self-manage their RSPs. And they gave parameters of certain things that you could do self-managing your RSPs. And the biggest parameter that the federal government allowed was for people that had registered funds to invest in real estate. Did you know that you can take your RSPs and you can lend it to somebody who needs to borrow that money to buy a house and they can pay you interest every month and that interest goes back into your RSP, tax-free, and you can do it at that level. So that's when they first announced this back in the 80s. They said anybody that has RSPs, you can self-manage your RSPs, and we're going to give you guidelines that you have to follow. But if you find a qualified real estate deal, you can lend money into that real estate deal and you can maximize your returns. Why? Because it's private investing and you can demand a 15% interest rate. Actually, if you're just doing private lending, you can demand a 15% interest rate plus a lender's fee on top of that could be another 2 or 3%. So you can get 17 or 18%. Now, all of this type of investing, when you do investing as a private self-directed account, there are rules you have to follow in Canada. And those rules are managed and maintained by the securities commissions in the provinces. The lead securities commissions in Canada are the Ontario Securities Commission, the Alberta Securities Commission, and the Securities Commission of British Columbia. Those are the three big boys. And the three big boys say you're only allowed to make so much interest. I think the number is 30% per annum. Anything you charge over 30% is illegal in Canada. It's called an onerous interest rate. But you can make 20% easily or 15%. It's really interesting how this happens. Now, when they allowed people to first start investing in real estate, they saw problems. They saw that people weren't really qualified and they didn't know how to pick a good real estate deal. And some of these real estate deals would go under. And that's where the next iteration came along. Back in the early 90s, the federal government allowed for the formation of fundraising entities for real estate called real estate investment trusts, a REIT. And a lot of people have heard of REITs. And a REIT is a very specific fundraising vehicle that is governed by the securities commissions. You have to follow their rules if you're going to set one up. And what I love about REITs and where this is going is that if you invest in a noted REIT, one of my favorite REITs in Canada is Equiton. Equiton is an amazing company. I have many friends there. It's a safe investment, but they're offering 12 and 14% returns. Now, a lot of people who are not really paying attention to their RSPs they leave their money with a fund manager and they don't bother with it. So when they see an advertisement for Equiton, they get nervous about it and they feel like it's scammy and that it doesn't work. But it does work, friends. Real estate investment trusts are superior ways, probably some of the best ways for you to make real money in your RSPs. REITs started about 15 years ago. But remember what I said before, everything is about evolution. You can see how this is evolving from Canada bonds to mutual funds to private real estate investing to REITs. And now the latest investment strategy where you can make the most money is called a mutual fund trust. So when REITs were created, REITs were very, very specifically designed for people to use to raise money for real estate projects. But as things started to evolve, some really amazing accountants that I know, they had another strategy. They said, what if we create a vehicle where elite level entrepreneurs could raise capital for any projects, for companies they were buying, for things that offered returns. These are called mutual fund trusts. And a mutual fund trust is just like a REIT. It is governed by the Securities Commission, so we have to follow the rules that the Securities Commission's put in place. That's what my company started. We have an investment company called the Dunn Investments Fund. And the Dunn Investments Fund is based in Alberta, and it's managed by one of the top securities law firms in Canada, Castles. And it's an amazing company. Doug McCartney is our lead attorney there who oversees everything that we're doing. George Nast over at Atlas One is our exempt market dealer and basically our compliance officer. He oversees everything that we're doing and it allows us to raise capital. But here's what's different about it. Because we're raising money to build resorts, right now, we have an operating memorandum filed and we're raising $20 million for our Hay Bay Resort. We're letting anybody who's an eligible investor or better. An eligible investor means you make at least $75,000 a year in income or you have $400,000 in assets, including your house. Now, more than 60% of people in Canada have $75,000 in income and they all have registered funds that they're not making money with. So if you're an eligible investor, you can decide to self-direct your RSPs and you better make that decision. Whether you take my advice or not, if you truly want to maximize your savings and your retirement, you're never going to do it. You're never going to maximize it unless you self-direct it. And self-directing it basically means you take it away from your bank or where you are now and you put it into one of 4 major banks that were built to allow people to self-direct their registered funds. Olympia Trust, Pacific Western Trust, Canadian Central Trust, or Odyssey. These are 4 really amazing companies that facilitate this. So you set up an account with one of those companies, you move your money over to that account, and then you can invest it in any of these high efficiency, high return companies. So with the Dunn Investments Fund, we have an operating memorandum filed to raise $20 million to complete the construction of our Hay Bay Resort. Now listen carefully to this. The Hay Bay Resort is a $60 million project that we're building in Napanee, Ontario. I raised $10 million from my friends and family and we started the project. It's 50% complete right now. In fact, we're opening the first phase of this resort in the next couple months. But we just started raising $20 million right now. With this $20 million, we're going to pay off the debt we have now and we're going to use the money to finish the resort. And we're offering a 15% annual return for 2.5 years. In addition to the 15% we're going to pay you, we're going to take 2% of our net profit and we're going to use that as a pool that we pay to all of our lenders in perpetuity as long as we run this resort. That's the most exciting part for me. So after 2.5 years, we're going to have the resort open. We're going to refinance all of our debt with a major bank. They're going to give us the money to pay you back your principal balance. But even after we've paid you back your principal balance, we're going to keep giving you money from that 2% ownership pool. Let's say you decide to give me a chance and you invest in the Dunn Investments Fund, the Class B shares, which is the Hay Bay Resort, and you get that 15% for 2.5 years and you get your money back and all the payments are made on time and you start getting that 2% royalty. When I give you your money back, if I have another resort and I invite you to do the same thing again with that same money, would you take me up on it? Obviously, the answer is probably yes, because We went through the last 2.5 years. I paid you on time. Everything went well. Friends, I have to tell you that we've been doing this for several years now. We've already raised millions of dollars from Canadians, and we've made all of our payments on time. Everything is working perfectly in the Dunn Investments Fund. So you can invest your money and maximize your returns. I'm talking about a 17% return. That means if you use your registered funds, you're going to make 17% of your money. And here's the best part. It's self-directed, no middlemen, which means you're not giving 4% to a fund manager. You're keeping all the money. I've had many people criticize me about this, and they say, well, why, if you're essentially becoming their fund manager, which I am, why are you not taking a fee for that? It's because I own the resorts. I'm going to make all my money in the way that you do. You're going to make a 2% override of our profits. I'm going to make a percentage of the profits too. So I'm doing all of this to help Canadians and make sure my resorts get built. But instead of paying the banks all the interest, why not pay you? Why not pay you the money you deserve to make with your registered funds? And the coolest part about this is you can do this with cash or registered investments. That's the best part. Now, friends, in my company, we're building 25 resorts across Canada. Because this is another part to this that you have to understand. To set up a mutual fund trust and to start to do this, I've invested over $300,000. And not just that, I've put together a world caliber team of managers that are managing the Dunn Investment Fund for me. Tammy Stanley is the president of our company. Tammy comes with extensive operations experience from FedEx Canada. Melanie Williams is our inside legal counsel. She takes care of making sure all legal documentation is in order. Doug McCartney is one of the lead attorneys and partners at Castle. He's a securities expert. Doug builds all of our operating memorandums and makes sure that compliance is ensured and we follow the rules. George Nast is the CEO of Atlas One. He's our compliance officer and our exempt market dealer. So if you're interested in investing money in our project, if you want to get in on this, what I'm going to do is give you a link. If you go to the notes of this show, there's a link there where you can join me on a Tuesday night presentation. Every Tuesday night, I do a 30-minute presentation where I'm going to go through the details of that offering. George Nast, our exempt market dealer, is on that presentation with me, and we will answer all your questions. If after watching that 30-minute presentation, you want to do this and take advantage of these superior returns, then all you're going to do is click on that link in the notes, come to the video. If you like that, during the presentation, I'm going to give you a link where you can book an appointment to talk to George Nast directly. Because I think that's really important. George is our exempt market dealer. He's a securities expert and he's a compliance expert. And he doesn't work for my company. He's going to ensure that all the rules are followed. He's done an incredible due diligence on our company. He will tell you about that due diligence. He's also going to tell you what the risks in this type of investment are. And I can't take money from you, only he can. So it's great because it's a third party separation from that. So friends, the bottom line is this. If you have registered funds or you have cash that you're trying to figure out the right thing to do to maximize your retirement savings, this is the answer. And it's not because it's something that I own. It's the latest iteration. When you look at the evolution of registered funds investing over the last 40 years, you're going to find that the people that got the best return were the people that jumped on those iterations, those evolutions first. They were the first people to get involved in it. And this is what I'm offering you the chance to do right now. Mutual fund trusts are literally the latest iteration of investment vehicles for registered funds in Canada. And the Dunn Investment Fund is one of the first companies in Canada to use a mutual fund trust with resorts and maximizing revenues to offer incredible returns on an annual basis, thereby allowing you to get back to doubling your portfolio every 10 years. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this time with me, the No Money Real Estate podcast today. If you want to know more about investing in the Dunn Investments Fund with the Hay Bay Resort Project, click on the link in the show's notes or go into the comments and type more info and I'll send you the link directly.